So hello everyone, we are cooking again with Aisha. So Aisha and I are just going to have a bit of a chat while we wait for some people to arrive. I'm going to get some nice hints of how I can cook better. So I know previously you have said some of your favourite additions that can make any meal more interesting. What would they be? Because I've forgotten.
Mixed herbs.
Yeah.
Bay leaf and fresh thyme.
Okay, so that was mixed herbs, bay leaves and fresh thyme. So mixed herbs, can they just be the ones you buy in a little spice jar?
Yes, yeah, no, any mixed herbs in a spice jar.
Brilliant. What is your favourite thing to cook?
Stewed chicken.
Stewed chicken. That could be why we have it a few times at Croydon Vision. We like eating it too. What is your favourite meal if you're not cooking and someone is cooking for you?
Someone is cooking for me. I would say seafood pasta.
Oh, what sort of seafood? Is it more fish or shellfish?
Shellfish, more shellfish, yeah.
And do you like them out of the shells or in the shells?
Out of the shells.
Out of the shells.
Easy, just to the eating.
Focusing on the eating rather than the getting to the eating. Yes. I like the idea. Welcome to anyone who's joining us, everyone who's joining us. Remember today we're cooking with Aisha. She's done a little bit of prep beforehand so we can get it in the time. But we will let you know everything she's done before. If you have any questions as we go through anything, do remember to type them in the comments. And if you have any questions for our later point, which is our book club, when we will be having Susanette, Faye and Natasha talking about books, also pop them in there. You can also say what your favourite books are as well. Or favourite authors, or favourite genres. So we're just waiting for a few more people to arrive and then we will start cooking. We can start maybe by going through the ingredients. Yeah. Aisha, what would we need if we were starting from scratch?
Okay, for the pasta bolognese sauce, we're gonna need 1 large onion.
So you've got a red onion, does it have to be a red onion?
No, you can use any onions, white or shallots, whatever you want to use, just at least if you're using shallot, they're smaller, you need more.
Okay.
Today I've got red onions and carrots, celery stick, red chili and courgettes. So
of all those ingredients, do we need them all? What's the bare minimum if I go into my cupboard and I haven't got much in there?
Well, as long as you have the onions, carrots and chili. The celery and the courgette, they are optional. You can use any vegetables that you want in there. I tend to use like mixed peppers, any veg that you like, you can just put it in there. I'm using.
Okay, so we did put up a set of ingredients and I'm going to apologise because I didn't pass it past Aisha. She looked at it and said, no, you don't need that. No, you don't need that. So from our set of ingredients, we've taken a few things off.
Yes.
We took off the, or actually going to have to remind me, the bacon.
Yes.
What else did we take off?
The parsley.
Parsley.
The parsley, we're going to use it to garnish. And we took off the, what is it called now? I'm just looking for
That's
it.
okay.
I'm just looking for it. What else did we take off? The oregano.
Yeah.
Yeah, we took it off. So I'm only using simple ingredients, to be honest, because it's just a simple pasta sauce. Okay,
so we wanted it to be nice and simple, so we took off some of the more complicated things.
Yeah, and the wine, we took off the red wine, that is optional if you want it. Yeah.
So remember, this is a basic, you can always add more things in, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get.
Yeah, whatever you want in there.
So let's just go through a full list of everything you're going to need. We've talked about the fresh stuff that you're going to chop up. What else are we going to need whilst we're cooking?
We're going to need the mixed herbs and dried bay leaf. I mean, you can use it fresh, but I haven't got the fresh. I'm using the dried bay leaf. We're gonna need 2 of that when we're cooking the onions, and chopped tomatoes. 2 tins of chopped tomatoes, or if you have plum, you can just break them in the pots, whatever you have in your cupboard. And I've got tomato puree. You just put a little, probably a teaspoon of that in the sauce.
So have you got tomato puree in a jar or in a tube?
I have the one in the jar to show that to you.
Yep.
This is the one I'm using.
Do you have any preference over the jar or the tube?
No, not really, just that this one is much easier to access.
Okay.
The tube, you have to pierce the thing and then start squeezing it. My fingers are not that good, so I'm using this one. And what else do I have? I've got here in my, in this little pot, my cube. So one stock cube. I've just got add later. I've just crush it up in the.
So I've just got a pestle and mortar where she's broken her beef stock cube down. Yeah. We're also, I'm guessing, going to need some mince. How much mince do we need?
Okay, we're gonna need 500 grams of mince.
And because we're doing it very traditionally, we have got beef mince, but you could use a vegetarian equivalent, so you could use corn mince. There are just a few different steps, but I'm sure if you cook with corn, you know the different steps that you need to take. And I'm guessing we also need some pasta to eat with it.
Pasta, I've got 500 grams of pasta, dried pasta.
So we have got, let's see if it's fusilli pasta, the spiral one. Yeah. Do you have any preference over which shape pasta you like cooking with?
Well, to be honest, that is my favorite shape, to be honest. Yeah, I prefer that than spaghetti, because spaghetti is too difficult. For me, it's difficult to eat. I just more easy, eat it. So that's my favorite.
And we've got a standard, what I would call normal pasta. It's the yellow one.
Yeah.
But I'm presuming you could use the
you have the
3 colours or whole wheat
or the mixed colours.
Yeah. So any pasta's up to you. So Aisha, do you want to get on with the preparation?
Yes. I'm gonna slice my onions.
So Aisha's already peeled the onion because she cut the top off and the bottom off and peeled off the extra layers of skin. She's now put it down on the flat surface and is chopping straight down the middle.
Yes, and then I'm just gonna slice it like that. You can dice it if you want.
So Aisha's just cutting it into rings, or half rings as it's in half. Yeah. You could dice it, it's up to you. Yeah. And just nice thin, and be careful with your fingers because we don't want any chopped fingers. And again, it's up to you. If you like chunky onion, you can leave it a bit bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
So
how you want it.
There we are. And Aisha's now cutting the second half, exactly the same. She's doing nice thin rings.
So it's easier to cook.
So yeah, so it's easier to cook. I'm learning here as well. There we are. And when Aisha gets down to sort of the last third, she turns it onto its side and then cuts it in the opposite direction so that it's easier to cut rather than worrying about it falling apart in your hands. I think Aisha must spend far too much time cutting onions because there's not a single tear coming from her eyes.
Yes, my eyes are dry.
So is there a tip to making sure you don't cry when cutting onions, or is it just practice?
Apparently you can wash them under hot water just to make it a little bit, but I mean sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it works, so I just cut them. If I cry, I cry. So I'm gonna put the onions in here.
So Aisha's just popped them on a plate she's got to one side ready to take all of her prepared ingredients.
Right, and next I'm going to do the carrot, just one carrot.
So we've got a bit of a carrot because we're just showing you how we cut them. I should cut it in half, and then she's going to take one half.
Dice it, I'm going to cut it because the carrot is, if it's a medium carrot, you just cut it in half and then.
So depending on the size of your carrot, depends on how many halves you cut it into. Yeah. Aisha's quartered it and then about 5 cuts along. So each piece is about the width of a little fingernail.
Yeah, so that's the carrot done.
And with cutting carrots, I'll say one of the tricks I've found is the sharper your knife, the easier it is to cut a carrot. because they're quite firm.
So now I've put the carrots and the onions in one plate because the two go together when you're softening the onions.
Okay.
I put them first for about 5 minutes, cook these two together, and then another 5 minutes I'll add the celery.
So Aisha took just a little bit off the top and the bottom of the celery, because that's usually not the best bit. She's cutting it in half lengthways and is now cutting it into little pieces approximately the same size as we cut the carrot.
Yeah.
It's up to you whether you want to have really tiny bits or bigger bits, depending on how much you're going to cook it down or how crunchy you want your spaghetti bolognese to be.
And then I'm gonna de-seed the chili.
Oh, chili.
You want the seeds in there. If you want it hot, then you leave the seeds. If you don't want it that hot, then you take them off. I'm just gonna cut the end bits off.
So I should just cut straight down the end that has the stalk sticking out of.
Yeah, and then cut it in the middle.
And are you cutting all up? I should cut it then straight in half.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna cut it in the middle again, just
into quarters, just to make it easier to de-seed it. Like, and then you just sort of scrape the seeds out without cutting too much of the outside of the chili. Flesh, I want to say. But I don't know if it's quite the right terminology. So Aisha isn't making sure she's getting rid of every seed, she's getting rid of most of them.
Most of them, yeah.
But
a little bit of kick in there.
Yeah, if you want more of a kick, you leave more of the seeds in.
Yeah.
So Aisha's taken her quarter and cut it in half lengthways again, and is cutting that into about 6 pieces.
Yeah.
Again, depending on how.
So that's one chili.
And I will say, very important notice, make sure you do not have cuts on your fingers when cutting chilies, and you do not touch your eyes afterwards, otherwise there will be lots of tears, more so than with onions.
And I'll put the chili and the celery in here because the two go together.
So the chili and celery's gone into a different
bowl.
It's a bowl. Then the onions and carrots, because they're going to take less time to cook because they are softer.
Yeah. I'm going to use this bowl for the courgettes.
So we've got a third bowl out for the courgette.
They go in when I put the tomato.
So is that because the courgette's more watery?
Yes,
so
yeah, because if you want it crunchy, you put it last, like when you put the chopped tomatoes and then close the lid for about 10 minutes, it's cooked. But if you want it soft, then you can put it with the celery and the chili.
Okay, so that's a good trick. The softer you want it, the earlier you put it in.
Yeah.
If you want it crunchy, leave it out later. If you want it softer, pop it in with your celery and your chili. So I should cut the courgette in half, lengthwise, and then cut it in half, cut that half in half, lengthwise again. And he's cutting it into bigger chunks than the carrot.
Yeah.
Because it's very watery, it will break down very quickly.
Yeah, so you know.
Here we go, we just keep cutting this bit up as well.
That's it.
This will check you all, to make sure all of you have got really good knife skills by the end of this, all this chopping you need to do. So we did
knife for this, yeah, makes it easier. Yeah. So I'm gonna put that in this bowl.
We did one of everything. If you were cooking our full quantity, which is the 500 grams of mince, how many onions, carrots, etc. would you need?
I think I said it earlier, 500 grams. You need 2, did I say 2 medium onions?
2 medium onions.
Yeah, if you don't have 2, if you want, you can use 1 large onions.
Okay.
So, yeah, for 500 grams. And 2 carrots.
So is that sort of a normal sized carrot?
Yeah,
okay.
2 of the celery. The chili, you need 1 because it's hot.
Okay.
Or the onions, you need 2. If you're using a bit large onions, just 1. And then 2 carrots.
So if in my store cupboard I've got chili powder, could I use that instead of a fresh chili?
You can use chili powder or the flake.
Or the chili flakes,
chili flake, yeah, anything, yeah. Or if you don't want to use chili, you can just put black pepper.
Okay.
So yeah, hot enough. Then I think that's my prep done. So this is all you need for your pasta.
So what would you do next? Because I think you've done the next stage, haven't you, Aisha?
Oh yeah, the next stage now, put a tablespoon of oil, olive oil, any oil that you have.
Yep.
Heat it up for about 1 minute and then put the onions and the carrots. Leave it for about 5 minutes to soften.
Yep.
Then you can add the celery and the chili and the bay leaf. Put it another 5 minutes. What else do you need? You put your mixed herbs.
Okay.
Leave it, yeah, another 5 minutes. So and then close the lid for the onions to be softened. Okay. As long as it's softened, it's breaking in the pan or pot, you can add your mince. And then I haven't done that yet, so we can do that now. Yep. Okay. So I'm gonna take the camera into the kitchen. Yeah. I am wearing all the right protective equipment, but I'm very sorry if I give any of you a bit of motion sickness as I move into there. Here we go. Try not to knock the legs. I'm just going to raise the camera a little bit so we can see better into the pot. And then tilt the camera down. So you can see in Aisha's pot, she's been cooking away nicely. She's softened the onions and carrots and added the bay leaf in with the celery and chili. And that's just been sitting there for about 10 minutes in total. 5 minutes for the onions and carrots and then another 5 for the other ingredients. Oh wow, it does smell amazing in here. And this is on medium heat.
So we're using a nice big frying pan so you can see in, but any pot that you want to use is the right one for you.
Whatever you want to use. So in here I've got all the ingredients I told you earlier. And the 2 bay leaves are there, the chili, the carrots, the celery, and mixed herbs, everything in there. We'll add the beef stock later when I put everything in.
Okay.
And leave it to simmer. Now
I can hear it sizzling now.
Yeah, so now, while this is sizzling, I'm gonna put water in the pot. We're gonna use pre-boiled water. So
we're putting water in our second pot, which is the saucepan. Just making sure it's all ready for when we need to pop our pasta in and cook it all.
Just mixing that a bit. I'm gonna add the minced meats in the next minute.
Every now and then you'll hear it sort of sizzle a bit more. That's about the time at which you need to stir it and just sort of settle it down a little bit.
So I'm going to put the water in here for the pasta. If you don't want to put salt, that's fine.
I was always told that the reason you add a pinch of salt to any boiling water is it brings down the temperature at which it boils, so it boils more quickly.
Well, I tend to add it, that's enough. I tend to add the salt when the water is boiling.
Okay.
So you can add.
We're back. Sorry about that. We are still here. Don't worry, we haven't gone anywhere.
Okay.
Aisha was just telling us that she adds her salt after the water is boiled.
Yeah.
So where were you, Aisha?
Well, I haven't added the salt yet. I'm waiting for the water to boil.
Okay.
So I'll just put the lid on to make it boil. And now I'm going to add my mince using a sharp knife to open the packet. So that's 500 grams of mince.
So as I said, we're using fresh beef mince, but you could use any alternative. If you're using fresh mince, remember there's a bit of paper on the bottom you need to take off.
Yeah. Just breaking this off.
So I'm just using her hands just to break it up a bit as she pops it in, to make sure there aren't too many big lumps. And just be careful if Aisha's holding them quite a way above the saucepan, not putting your hands into it.
Yeah, that's it. So, put that in.
And Aisha would always say, clear up as you go.
Just wash my hands.
Just washing your hands because you just touched the raw meat.
Yeah.
Always wash your hands after touching raw meat.
So now I'm gonna.
And I just stirring it around, making sure that the spoon is breaking up any lumps that are left in it.
Yeah. It smells yummy.
Oh, it does. It smells wonderful in the kitchen.
So this is for me. That's my secret ingredient, the mixed herbs. You cannot go wrong. And the bay leaf. I've got the dry bay leaf because I couldn't find a fresh one today, so I use the dry bay leaf. Whatever you have in your cupboard, really.
So if you're worried about putting a bay leaf in because you won't be able to find it and take it out, you cannot use it.
You can, yeah, you don't have to use it. It's up to you. I mean, the mixed herbs on its own, it smells amazing.
It is.
It smells amazing.
So we're just moving the mince around and letting it brown off.
And then maybe another 2 minutes I'll mix it again. Let me just check. Oh, my water is boiled. Oh, that's good. So what I'll do now, I'll add the pasta and then I'll add the salt later. I'm gonna
Okay.
get a scissors. Right. That's my 500 grams of pasta and I've got 500 grams of mince.
Mhm. So our bag of pasta said it took about 10 minutes to cook.
Yeah.
It would depend on what pasta you're using. If you're using dry pasta, it takes a little bit longer than fresh pasta.
That's it.
And it also depends on how crunchy, al dente, if we're going to use the proper word. You want your pasta.
Sorry.
If you want it a little bit firmer, you'll cook it for a little bit less time. If you want it softer, you'll cook it for a little bit longer.
Yeah, so I'll just, now I'm going to add my salt.
And how much salt do you add?
I just
Is that wonderful ingredient of some?
yeah, just a little bit, as you can see. Just
It is about half a teaspoon.
oh yeah, not too much. Right, I'm gonna mix this.
Okay, and the mince is still browning off. There's still a little bit of pink to it, so
Yeah,
it
it
takes
has
a
to be.
while to cook your mince. Don't rush it. It's on a medium heat rather than a high heat.
Yeah. So until the meat is brown.
It's making me hungry. And you'll sort of feel it have a different sensation against the wooden spoon once it's all cooked, because it goes a bit softer.
Oh, it moves up, the spoon moves around more easily than before, so you can know that the meat is cooking. And then you just mix this pasta up nice so it doesn't cook.
Yeah, so I should just mixing the pasta up
Yeah.
just to make sure it's not boiling over.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the water is fine. I don't need to worry. So now, while that is cooking, so these are, I've already added the mixed herbs and the bay leaf. I'll just put them back in the cupboard. And
I think we're all going to be needing to go and buy some mixed herbs so we can cook like Aisha.
yeah, just mixing it. It's almost there.
So how can you tell when it is fully ready?
The meat goes brown.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be brown all over. So
Yeah.
I'll give it 1 more minute and then I'll add the chopped tomatoes and the courgettes.
So yeah, we're going to add the courgette at the same time as the chopped tomatoes because it's a similar texture.
Yeah. Probably now I can add my stock.
Your ground up stock cube.
Yeah.
So if you didn't have a pestle and mortar, you can do it by hand. It just gets it finer with a pestle and mortar. If you've got a rolling pin and a bowl and you're very careful, you can use the end of a rolling pin in your bowl. And just make sure you stir it around once you've added the stock cube so the stock's throughout the meat, not just in the centre. If you're doing a vegetarian option, you'd probably use a vegetarian stock cube rather than a beef one.
And you don't have to use beef stock, you can use chicken stock.
Yeah, so if you're using, you could use chicken mince.
Yeah, whatever you have. It doesn't have to be beef stock.
So just make sure whichever stock you're using is the same as whichever meat or meat substitute you're using.
Right, so now that is ready because the meat is brown. So I'm going to open this, chopped tomatoes.
And we've got nice ring pulls that make it easy.
Make it easy.
If you had tins, you had to use a tin opener, you might do it beforehand just to make sure you're all ready.
So this is one.
So pouring it in and then just shaking it to make sure all the little excesses, and you shake straight down, not left and right, because you don't want your kitchen covered in tomato.
So that's it. And then what I tend to do at this point, I get water, any water, it doesn't have to be hot, but because I'm standing next to the oven, I'm using hot water. So
just pop a little bit of water in the tin.
Just to rinse inside the tin.
Then you get all of those little bits of juice that are left in the bottom.
I don't like any waste. Just a little bit, then that's it. Add it in there.
So it's probably less than a tablespoon worth of water, just enough to rinse it. You don't have too much water in it.
Yeah, that's it. And then you do your tomato puree.
How much tomato puree?
Teaspoon.
So it's a teaspoon of tomato puree. I just used a heaped teaspoon rather than a flat teaspoon, but it's up to you.
Putting this away.
So Aisha's got a plate where she's popping her utensils down so that they don't make the surface dirty, and she's got one wooden spoon that she's using for the pasta and a different one that she's using for the now bolognese-like sauce, because we've got tomatoes in there. It's not just meat and it sounds a lot wetter now.
It's gone quieter now.
It's gone quiet, but as you're moving it around, it sounds wetter.
Yeah. So what I'll do at this point, I'll add the courgette.
So we say the courgette, is that the last thing we add?
Yeah. And then put the lid to shimmer.
So is this one courgette or one courgette?
One big courgette, yeah. If you have two small ones, it's fine.
I just mix it in, and this also gives us a nice bit of colour, because it's got that green in it as well as all the reds that you got from the tomatoes, and even the orange is a similar base colour.
Yeah. Let me just taste. Yeah, I might need a little bit of salt.
So when Aisha tasted it, she got the spoon out, tapped it to her finger, rather than spoons.
No, I don't like it in my mouth here. So I'll add a little bit of salt.
So always taste before at this point, because then that's really where you can tell what you're going to need.
Well, yeah. So that's almost done. I'm gonna put the lid now for about 10-15 minutes.
Okay.
Mixing it occasionally. Make sure that it doesn't stick at the bottom.
So Aisha said she's going to pop the lid on, and just occasionally over the next 10 minutes she's going to take it off and stir it to make sure that it is all...
I'm going to turn it on.
So this allows everything just to sort of mix together properly, get rid of some of that liquid, because we don't need all of the liquid.
No, that's it. This one is almost done.
So our pasta's almost done, not quite. But we'll come back to it. So, has anyone got any questions for us at this point?
No, it's been a lot of comments of how hungry.
Oh, we're making everyone hungry at home. I can see Maxine's comment. I will sit down with Aisha and we will get this method popped up on the website, on the Facebook page for you. Yes, it will be posted, but I need Aisha's expertise rather than me finding a recipe. So I'm going to leave Aisha in the kitchen to do her little bit of simmering and such, and I'm going to go out to Natasha, Faye and Susanette, where we will be talking about books. So feel free to pop your comments in. I'm very sorry, I'm about to move with the tripod again. So just take, there we are. There we are, just coming back out. There we are. I just got to scoot myself back a little bit. Okay, so feel free to continue commenting on. I will be looking at the comments whilst Susanette, Faye and Natasha are talking about it. So,
Cool. So I'm done from commenting.
You're done from commenting for now.
Thank you. Yeah.
So our first question that I've got, and we're going to go around clockwise because I like clockwise movement, so we're starting with you, Susanette.
Oh, okay.
Is what...
Hi everyone first. Hello. Yeah.
What is your favourite book at the moment?
Ooh, at the moment.
At the moment.
Oh my.
Not of all time, but at the moment, what's your favourite book?
Gosh, you see, I'm a bookworm, so I love books, and I've actually got 8 books that a friend of mine and I were going through and to read. So, what would be my favorite book at the moment? This is a hard one.
Okay.
I'll go for one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm reading a book which is about the John Lewis model, Speed Lewis, in terms of how the model was formed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
We'll come back
I'll
to
go with
that
that
one.
one. Yeah. That's my now reading yesterday.
And Faye, you've had a little bit more time.
No.
Same question.
So at the moment, I've started a new detective murder crime franchise. So I read one of their books at Christmas time, and I've gone back to the beginning. So it's called The Surgeon. I think it's by Tess Grisham. Hope that's right. It might not be, but it probably is. Yeah, it's very good so far. I like my murder books. Getting all tips.
And if anyone's got any questions as well for these three, feel free to type them in the comments. Natasha, what is your current favourite book?
Current, I'll say the Bible.
Okay, aside from the Bible.
She's actually got books open to me. So I've got a few. Oh gosh, current one. I'm gonna have to pick up John C. Maxwell, Intentional Living. Just about knowing who you are, your purpose, your goals, aspirations, and it really challenges you, gets you to think about your skill set. And he's a great reader. So far, this is number one out of my pile of books I have in my lap.
Well, I'm going to add my favourite. It's not a book; it's a series of books. They're all called the Bobbyverse, and they are science fiction. And the main character is based in the now, but they're set in the future. So you've got all the pop culture references that you understand, but they're all set far, far into the future where stuff has happened to Earth and you get to find out what's happened.
Oh, wow.
And they are really interesting. And it's about
how far forward?
I think a couple of 100 years, maybe even 1,000 years.
Oh, wow.
And it is based on artificial intelligence.
Okay.
But I can't say any more than that because you learn a lot as you read the book.
So far we have a zombie, a couple.
Investigation.
Murder and investigation and future, and then Natasha in the middle of let's grow and learn as we are. Amazing. Yeah. Okay.
So we've had a couple of comments. Bob says that he also likes detective sort of books. He likes the Inspector Banks books by Peter Robinson. And Maxine also likes science fiction. That's nice. So the next question, and I might start with Faye this time, is what is the first book you remember making an impact on you, or you just remember being the first book you either read or had read to you?
Well, I mean, it was probably something that was about 5 pages long, if you think that far back. Maybe a colour book? No. But in terms of like actual books, I'd say A Series of Unfortunate Events. When I was younger, I was absolutely obsessed, and as soon as it would come out, I would literally sit there and read the whole book in like 3 days. and then I'd have to wait like another year for the next one to come out. But yeah, I was just obsessed with the characters and the storyline, and yeah, I was a bit upset by the remake of the film and the TV. It wasn't as good. But I feel that that's a whole other debate, isn't it? Movie or books.
Oh, we're not having that one at the moment.
Yeah, we were talking about that a few days ago, isn't it?
Seems an unfortunate event. Yeah.
Okay, so Natasha.
I'm going to say Roald Dahl. I love the stories, the animation, they were just so vibrant and just had me reading more and more. And at school, I remember we all wrote to Quentin Blake, who I believe did the animations, if I'm right. And out of all the class, he chose me to write back to, so that made me want to read more books. So yeah, the Roald Dahl stories, they were really good. Yeah.
And Susanette. You can choose which bit of the question you answer. There are a couple of options.
I know a book. At the time, it was a literature book at school, but it really impacted me, which was Things Fall Apart, and it's by Chinua Achebe, yeah, and it has these amazing proverbs on it, which were just like, at that age, I did not fully understand it, but as you grow older, you're like, oh my goodness, that's what it's about. But I also did love the series of John Grisham.
Ah.
The Pelican Trip. I remember going into the loo with it like this. I'm not talking to anyone until I finished it. Yeah.
So from our members, we've got sort of first books. First book to impress Bob was, I've just got to scroll back up because he wrote it to you, the Janet and John books. Anna says The Borrowers or some Enid Blyton. They're good ones. Maxine says Peter and Jane, but later on Nancy Drew even, sorry. And Danielle says Bimbo and Topsy or the Amelia Jane books and all Enid Blyton. And I'll pop my story in. I was read to a lot as a very young child, so on my bookcase on the landing, I've got all of the Toad Hall books, Wind in the Willows, the Jungle Book, and a lot of the Roald Dahl books as really big A4 books that I just remember my dad getting out and us reading as bedtime stories.
Yeah. Well,
and I also think I had The Borrowers.
You went way back, Catherine.
I went way back.
Okay.
So the next question may or may not be any easier. It's what is your favourite author? You can either say of all time or now, and why.
Why? Oh.
Ooh.
Okay. Yes. Sorry.
Natasha's frantically going through
Just looking through
a
some
pile of
books.
books.
I'm going to say, for now, The Epiphany by my friend Sarah Mill. She writes poems about kind of everyday life, any situation, and they're short, they're sweet, you can apply it to anything, and I think it's just catchy to read, and an inspiration. So yes, that's
We're coming over to you, Susanette.
That's a faith.
Okay, we're going to Faye first.
Well done, Natasha. Well done.
There's quite a few. I think for me, if I'm a series person, if I find a book I like and there's a series of it, I will binge the whole series. Like, I think I've read all the Jackie Collins books. But if we're looking at like sort of, I don't know, I guess obviously Jacqueline Wilson was one that I read a lot when I was younger, like Tracy Beaker, and just I read so many of them.
Yeah.
The Story of Tracy Beaker was actually one of the first books I read, I think. Yeah, I think, yeah. I'll go with Jackie Collins though.
Okay.
Yeah. Jackie Collins.
Susanette?
Right. Okay. There are quite a few, but I would say in terms of the most impact in my life of an author who is not just about the books but also what I listen to audio-wise and teachings, it's John Maxwell, I would say. That would be one, and Steve Kirby is another. I mean, there's a list of them, but I love books of of history, you know, knowing about people's lives, the mistakes they've made, and how I can avert from making them. So yeah, there's a lot of them. So forgive me, authors, for not listening to those guys. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
we got C.S. Lewis. So from our members, we've got Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And none of us have said that. We have to, yeah. Girl Online and Anything by Claire Balding. And then another one for Catherine Cookson.
Oh yeah.
That's the way she wrote. I'm going to throw in a fictional author there who has been ghostwritten for. Richard Castle of the TV series Castle. His books were written by a famous mystery detective, and they haven't told us who it is. But the books are very well written. I think it's one of the Scottish detective writers. They are very of a type.
All right. I don't know.
But no, I would say it's very difficult finding a favourite, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's the season of where you're at in life.
Yeah.
It changes from time to time, isn't it? But I think there are some authors who, as long as they grow, you will grow with them. And
Yeah.
then there are those you kind of say, no, I think I've passed that now.
So, next question might be easier.
Please.
It's, what is your favourite genre of books?
Oh,
Okay, we'll go with Faye, because I think that is easy for her.
Detective stuff. Detective stuff. Anything with a crime that someone has to find out. Yeah, anything detective. There's so many as well out there. There's like a whole section dedicated to crime fiction.
Mhm.
That's where I should go
So
straight
is it
to.
true crime or fictional crime?
I prefer fictional crime because it's not real. And it's a bit less sad. But I do like watching a lot of true crime. I don't really read a lot of true crime.
Okay.
But yeah.
Natasha.
Natasha, where are you? Non-fiction, I think, is my area. Kind of real life stories.
Mhm.
Something I can relate to, something I can grow from. And then, yeah, I would say non-fiction. I have a little bit of horror hidden somewhere. I like a little bit of horror on the side. But yeah, I'll say those two.
And Susanette.
I'm going to give 3. I love leadership books. It stretches me and develops me. I love investigatory books, so like John Grisham books. The whole finding out who killed who and how and when. And yes, I used to love them, but I don't actually read them anymore. But I remember the Runaway Jury. Oh, that book was just, and then they spoiled the movie. Oh, disappointing. Yeah, and I love to learn from people's experience. I love a lot of biographies. I love biographies a lot.
Yeah, we've got lots of people commenting on what they do like, and a lot of people saying that's a really difficult question. It was a very mean one to ask. We've said lots of different types. So I like fiction best. Maxine says her favourite book of all time is Homeric. I hope I've said that right. Apparently it's about a family through the generations. That sounds really interesting, because I've read similar books like that. They're often very interesting because you just see a family and how it changes through the years. I would have to go with 2, like Susanette. I tend to either read murder mysteries or science fiction. And if I can find a murder mystery that's science fiction, I'm settled.
Yeah, books are just awesome.
They are. So I think the last question I have got for you is,
Before we eat.
well, I might see if it's ready, is how do you read your books? So is it paper, is it electronic, is it audio? And why?
I love a good book, hardcover book, with, you know, that anticipation of ordering from Amazon or wherever you order it from, and then you know it's coming, and then it comes on the day, and you have the fresh smell of a book. So I know a lot of you are on Kindle, and obviously for different reasons, but I love a hard copy book. and I know eventually I will need to get into the Kindle. I very much know that, but for now, I love a hard copy.
Yeah, I planning to read my current book on my Kindle/laptop because I didn't want to wait 30 days for Amazon delivery or however long it's taking. Which I would like to do. I prefer an actual book. Yeah.
Natasha?
Considering I'm holding 5 books in my hand, I would say I like books, paperback books. Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to say, for me, I was exactly where you were about 8 years ago. You would not have got me to use an electronic book reader of any type. There's something tactile about reading the book, physically turning the pages, and how could you do that? I got a Kindle, I read 1 book on my Kindle, and I only pick up books now in situations where I don't want my Kindle to get wet. So I might take a book. I've had the same book that I have taken to camp with me for the last 15 years, but that's more because I don't have time to read on camp. But yeah, I was that way. I
totally hear you.
But then I started doing more and more walking, and to pass the time whilst I walk, I listen to audiobooks.
Yeah, I do as well.
So it's very much depending on what I'm doing. If I want to sit down and read a book, and I'll say my suitcases are now far lighter than they ever used to be, because I take one thing with me rather than... I have to make sure half of my suitcase has got room for books.
Yeah, but it's always good to buy a book at the airport as well. You're like, this is my holiday book.
I read 9 books on my last beach holiday.
Holding a book on the beach, like a book. But no, I very much hear you, definitely. But there's also something about making notes in your book.
Yeah.
I love making notes in my book so I can go back and quote something that I saw and I'm like,
I can't do that.
So a book for me is like a textbook.
Yeah.
It's a learning tool. So I know you can do that on Kindle as well. You can highlight and stuff, but there's just something about going on the shelf and picking it up.
But how do you feel about when you finish reading your book, then donating it to a charity shop so someone else then gets to read it?
Yeah, I'll buy them a book.
I'll buy them a book.
But most books I read, it's notes and things that I will be using on applying in my life. So I will buy someone a book rather than generally, because they will not understand some of the things that I highlight in the routine.
So for our members, some of them have said Braille. That's the way in which they read books. We've got print cans. Some cans can be hard because it's large print, and then the book gets really heavy. Some people are using large print, white on black on a Kindle app, on a tablet, or even going really old school with audiobooks and on cassette.
Ooh, why not? Who remembers that?
I do.
Walkman. Your Walkman. You had your Walkman. You had the cassettes in there. Oh,
big headphones.
You look
We
so
had like
cool.
a massive, with loads of the cassettes and the fairy tale.
Yeah, I used to have all the cassettes that I would listen to them whilst we were driving somewhere. So on our big holidays, I'd have the whole back seat of the car was just, I got my cassette box out and chose which book I was going to listen to whilst we went along. I've got
the labels in on them.
I've got Aisha nudging me saying, please come back into the kitchen, the food's ready.
I love books, but they're like so good.
So
it's also a good one. Yeah.
Need to move again.
Thank you guys.
So bye everyone.
Bye.
Let's see if I can do this without knocking anything. There we are.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to scoot it a little bit that way so we can see the pot. So Aisha's been busy in the kitchen whilst we've been talking about books. She has drained the pasta in a colander, and then did you do anything else?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put it in.
Okay.
So.
Oh,
my
wow.
sauce is ready.
So the sauce is all ready. It is just nicely bubbling away.
Yeah, sorry, I know you saw me, I just lift the lid with my hands, but you need to use gloves. I'm okay with that. Someone will be saying, oh, is the lid not hot? It's hot, but I'm fine with it. But you can use gloves or tea towel to...
Yep, so make sure you're protecting yourself when lifting things.
Yeah.
Aisha's so good at this, she forgets that the rest of us aren't.
I know, I just realized I did that, and yeah, so now I'm just adding the pasta in the sauce. As you can see, so I need to...
So I should just tip the colander over gently and gently scooped out the pasta into the sauce. We're just going to pop the colander out the way into the sink, and then
it's on low heat actually.
so it's on a nice low heat now, and we're just going to stir the pasta and the bolognese all together so it's all nice and coated over the pasta. We've got quite a small dish for this quantity, so we're going to take it nice and easily. I would suggest you take it easily as well, and always add your pasta to your wet rather than the other way around. Just making sure everything's coated. So if you're not sure it's coated, give it a little bit more of a stir.
Just in case. So you can see the carrot, courgettes, celery, everything is in there. I think that's about it. And we're gonna, when I dish it up, I'm gonna add a bit of cheese, but I'm gonna use cheddar, but if you have any cheese, Parmesan, because where most people use Parmesan cheese.
Yep.
But I'm gonna use cheddar because we haven't got Parmesan. It's all nicely coated all over,
so we're just making sure all of our pasta's nice and coated, so you get a better ratio of meat to pasta rather than having all your mince on the top and then you get to the bottom and go,
you get the pasta at the bottom.
all I've got is pasta.
Yeah, so that's it, it's all done. So the pasta is ready. Wow. Right, that's it. So at this point, I'm just gonna heat up. That's just me. I'm just gonna heat up my plate because it's cold.
Oh, yes,
So
good idea.
make sure that the plate is warm when I put the pasta in.
If you pop hot food on a cold plate, it'll cool down really quickly.
So I'm gonna put my plate in the microwave. You can put it in the oven if you think that's better. And
So yeah, if you were doing garlic bread, you might be cooking that in the oven and have your oven on. You can just pop your plate in there at the same time.
So I'll put it for, let's say 3 minutes because we want it to be hot.
1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Start. High power microwave. 3 minutes.
So just stir that a little bit more while that is warming up.
So yeah, the traditional way is to put Parmesan on top, but if you've got any cheese in your fridge, that will work. It's just to give it that sort of molten
Gives you that
gooiness on top.
Creamy texture.
The creamy texture.
Yeah. I've taken out the 2 bay leaves I put in there earlier. I've taken them out, so remember to take them out because they're very tough.
Or if you want to give someone a surprise, just leave them in and say there might be a bay leaf in there. It's like finding the cardamom pods in your rice when you have an Indian meal.
Yeah. So should I get the cheese out? The cheese. So I'm gonna get the cheese out.
So again, also we have pre-grated cheese.
Yeah.
You can buy your cheese as a block and grate it yourself. It's up to you the way you want to do it.
I'm gonna put the cheese in a bowl.
So we're just going to pop some cheese in a bowl so that we can easily sprinkle it on top.
And then I'm gonna garnish it with parsley.
And then we're going to garnish it on top with parsley as well. So look as good as it smells and tastes.
Parsley.
We're just stirring the spaghetti bolognese every now and then just to make sure that it doesn't stick, and just it helps to make sure everything's coated really well and just keeps nice and warm. And as we said, it's got it on a low heat so that it just keeps warm rather than it cooks anymore, because we know it's all well cooked.
I'm gonna get a deep spoon.
So we're looking for a nice big spoon to serve this with. If you don't have really big spoons like we do, you can always use a tablespoon. You'll just have to do more spoons. The bigger the spoon, the fewer times you have to worry about dropping it somewhere. Just waiting for the plate to be nice and hot.
That's my parsley. I'll put it here to garnish.
I can't see that. So we're going to garnish it over here by the frying pan, and then I'll get Aisha to bring it closer to the camera so it's a better view. Ah.
Complete. Door open.
Right. It is nice and
Door closed.
So our plate's now nice and warm. I'm presuming most people will be using something to hold the plate.
sorry.
Aisha just got it out, straight out of the microwave.
So I'm gonna turn the cooker off now. The heat is off. Okay. Now I'm gonna plate. So I'm just bringing it close.
There we go. So Aisha just picked up the plate, and you can hear how hot the plate is because it just sizzled as you put it down. I always like hearing my food sizzle. No, I know I've got a really good hot plate at that point.
So I think that's enough. Let's see if I can get a bit of color. Yeah.
We're making sure we've got some courgette and carrot on the top, just so it looks as sort of colourful as it is in the frying pan,
Yeah.
because it's a beautifully colourful meal.
So there you go. That's your pasta bolognese. So I'm gonna sprinkle.
Just going to sprinkle
Cheese.
some cheese, about a handful. But again, this is up to you. The more cheese you want to add,
Yeah.
if you really like your cheese, you can add more. If like me, you don't really like cheese, you can add just a little bit. And we're just popping a little bit of parsley on top to garnish it. And then once that's happened, I'm sure Aisha will bring it over here so that we can show it to the camera. Okay, Aisha? Here. There. Okay, so we have got a beautiful plate of food with it's our pasta bolognese with all the lovely ingredients, loads of vegetables that we had earlier, little bit of cheese on the top that's starting to melt because it's nice and warm, and a little bit of parsley as well.
So.
Oh, apparently I've been nominated to try the food today.
Not Susanette.
Not Susanette. So I shall just rearrange the camera, because otherwise you won't be able to see me. I've just got to work out which...
You're going to move it over there?
I'm just going to rotate it a little bit, so we're not looking at the hob.
Okay.
I think I'll move back out to be the easiest one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh, there we are. You get to see me move with the camera yet again. I'll get there. There we are. Just gonna untilt it and drop it down a bit so it's better view. I'll come into the kitchen. I've been allowed in the kitchen again. So I'm not going to use a knife because it looks so nice. And oh, it is very hot. It's not too bad on the sides, just don't put your hand underneath because it is all... That's okay. So I'm just going to mix in the cheese a bit because I'm not a big fan of unmalted cheese because I'm peculiar. Mmm. Oh, sorry, I can't talk now. It's really, really nice. There's all those lovely flavours that Aisha popped in. And we've got all the beautiful vegetables that I haven't had a chance to eat, but I am sure I will manage to later because this is now my plate of food. I'm sure when we ask Aisha nicely, she'll plate up for a few more for some other people here because we've done enough for everyone in here. You'd say, how many people would this serve?
This one will serve about 6 people.
So about
Yeah.
500 grams of mince is
Yeah.
about enough for six
6
people.
people, yeah.
And we hope you enjoyed cooking along with us or watching us cook. And send us any photos of what you cook later. So I'm just going to steal my food. And go back towards the camera and see if we've got any other things that we need to...
Would you like me to plate one without the garnish, just a plain pasta?
We'll have a plain pasta plated, yes.
Without the garnish on it.
So I'm just going to do one more without the cheese and the
Pasta.
parsley. Sorry, I've forgotten what garnish we put on top, just so you can see what that looks like as well. And yeah, feel free, do join us next week whilst Arsha's plating up. Next week we are back with me because we are going to be talking about technology. But before we talk about technology, Odette is going to be joining us and doing some dancing with us. If I remember rightly, she's going to do some line dancing and the electric slide. So we shall be dancing along in the background, learning how to do it.
So that's the one without the garnish.
There we are. So that's just the plate of pasta, no garnish on top. And remember, all of the vegetables we put in are optional. Apart from, you really need your onions,
Definitely.
you need your tomatoes.
You need your tomatoes, definitely.
But everything else
Everything
is just
else
optional.
is optional. Yeah.
So I hope you all had fun with us and all learnt a little something. We will make sure that all of the recipe gets popped up on Facebook later. I will sit down with Aisha and I'll do some typing so that we know, we can say exactly how you cook.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll see you again next week.
Thank you for watching.
Goodbye.
Bye.